Yes, guys, welcome back to another video. It's time that we explored which draftees are going to have the biggest impact in 2025.
Dacos, famous name, famous number, famous club.
There's a new breed of age-defying stars in the league. The brilliance of Nick Dacos in 2022, the artistry and the poise of Harry Sheezel just 1 year later. And if they weren't captivating enough, who could forget Harley Mania in 2024? These new kids are dominating the league in their rookie seasons. And the only question left is who will it be in 2025? This video is powered today by Deakin University, home to the world's #1 sports science school for 3 years running. Okay guys, so the rookies are coming in really hot in the AFL in the last few years, but I want to know why that is happening. And for me, all the roads lead back to the private schools. Love it or hate it, the competitiveness amongst the country's wealthiest rival schools is driving new levels of professionalism. The ABC in a recent article suggested that 25 out of the top 30 players in the 2024 draft attended private schools and that number is only getting bigger. The financial power of these schools is significant, and the prestige of defeating a rival school or getting a player drafted means that building state-of-the-art facilities and attracting the country's best coaches is just driving things to new levels, and ultimately means that the players are getting better knowledge, better education to come into the league and succeed. On top of that, kids are taking things into their own hands. They're attending these new elite performance centers that are popping up. There's a new wave of that sort of thing. If you watch any of the aspiring draftees on Instagram, they're all attending these. They're trying to get bigger, faster, stronger. So when they come into the AFL, they're ready to go. So that covers the why, but now we're going to look at the who. So using historical data, I'm going to have a look at past draftees to see how they performed at the top level. And I'm going to go with process of elimination here. So I'm going to target key position players and rucks first. In 2023, 18 key position and rucks were taken in the top 60 of the draft. Now that's just under 1/3 of all draftees taken inside the top 60. In 2024, that number was 19, so just as significant as 2023. But the main difference in 2024 was only 2 key position players were taken in the top 20, Alex Tyree and Jonty Fall, compared to 9 in 2023 that you can see here. I thought that was a bit of an interesting juxtaposition between the 2 years of key position players, and kind of asks a question, does that mean that our 2024 key position draftees aren't going to perform as well as our 2023 ones? Or does it just mean that recruiters are maybe not valuing those players with new updated game plans? It'll be interesting to see. More relevant to this video, though, is how those 2023 key position players performed in their debut season. And to do that, I want to know how many games that they've played and how much impact they showed in those games. So of these 18 key position players, only 5 of them played 5 games or more. So we can immediately remove 13 key position players that played less than 5 games. Of the 5 players that played 5 or more games, I'd say overall from a first year perspective, 2 of these guys had a really meaningful influence on their team. Of course, this is subjective because I'm combining games played and ranking points as well as my general feeling for their performances, but the 2 that I've got here are Cal Shadir and Logan Morris. Logan Morris topped the player ratings of the first year key position players with 6.7 ranking points, and he played 19 games. Follow that with Cal Shadir, who played 17 games and averaged 5.6 rating points. If we look at the next 3 players that played over 5 games, you've got Nate Caddy with 10 games and 5.1 rating points. Jed Walter played 14 games and averaged 2.5 rating points, and Dan Curtin 7, but he actually played more as a midfielder anyway, so he didn't really play as a key position player. So all in all, with 2 out of 18 key position players having an impact in their first season gives an 11% success rate to key position players. So it is a pretty mean initiation for key position forwards with a pretty low strike rate in the first year, but there are some takeaways here from looking at Logan Morris and Cal Shadir. So the first thing for those 2 players is they are playing for very successful teams. Brisbane obviously winning the premiership, and for Cal Shadir's Hawks, particularly after he came into the team later in the season, they went on a really big run and ended up making a semi-final. Being in better teams means they are able to get better service, good entries coming inside forward 50, but also that they didn't have to be the absolute guy in their teams. They didn't have to be the one that stayed at home and relied on their strength. they were able to play with a little bit of, expressive freedom. They were able to jump at the football, use their traits like their athleticism, speed off the mark, and just being able to jump at the footy to impact the game. I think that's also why you see less key defenders come in and make an impact in their first season. There's more of a expectation of defensive discipline that's maybe not necessary as a key forward. You've got to have that physicality to go with the forwards, but you also have to have that extra bit of discipline, tactical discipline to stay with an opponent throughout the game as well. So that's all the key position players and the rucks taken care of from the 2023 draft. But what if we look at the smaller running players as well? So again, if we look at that 2023 draft crop, I said 18 of the top 60 were key position players. That means that 42 were your smaller bodied players, your high forwards, your midfielders, your halfbacks, your wings, that sort of thing. And 17 of those players played 5 games or more. And me searching through the rankings, a little bit of the eye test, a little bit of the rating points and the games played, I've come up with a list of 13 players that had an impact. And here is a list of those players in order of their rating points. 13 players impacting out of 42 is around a 30% strike rate. So for a first-year player, 30% strike rate is pretty good. That compares with 11%, like I said, from the key position players. Now, overall, that's fairly subjective. I mean, this is just, partly my opinion and it's partly champion data rating points, but it is just interesting to see how many games, how much impact players are having in their first season. Going back to that list of players, though, the first thing that really stands out to me here is the large amount of players that are facilitating those wing and half-back roles. 5 of the 13 players used these positions as a gateway to the AFL. That's something that a player like Riley Sanders really learnt the hard way here. As a, genuine full-time centre bounce mid, he wasn't really able to make himself flexible enough to play an outside position, and I think that really hurt him in his debut season. And that brings us to the first point, that positional flexibility here is key. We look at players like Windsor, McKercher, Wilson that rated really highly in their first seasons. They all play midfield at junior level. They got drafted as midfielders, but they had that extra bit of athleticism and a little bit of poise on the ball to be able to play those outside positions. And tapping into that athleticism that I spoke of, if we zoom out a little bit here and look at the entire list of players again, you'll find that most of these players are serious endurance and all have reasonable speed as well, probably with the exception of the endurance base with players like Harley Reid and Nick Watson, who aren't really endurance runners. I think Harley Reid in this sense is a little bit of an outlier, a little bit of a freak. The rest are really strong runners. McKercher just recently finished 3rd in North Melbourne's 2K time trial. Wilson won St Kilda's. Thomas and Thulstrup were both in the top 10 in their draft combined year, and Fraser was number 1 at the Dogs over 2K as well. As I said, someone like Reid is probably the only player on the list that has a large power element to his game, and that power and strength usually requires a few more pre-seasons just to get conditioning and be able to use that power against men. The other 3 genuine centre bounce midfielders on that list are players like Graham, McAuliffe and Sanders. Both Graham and McAuliffe really found a niche as a defensive-minded midfielder in their teams, and then you've got Sanders, who was really just your sort of engine mid for the Western Bulldogs, but he wasn't able to establish himself in that lineup consistently. I think the main takeaways there overall that it's really rough to be a key position player if you want to have an impact in your first season, and running players tend to thrive. They can play a little bit on the outside. They can use their athleticism and particularly their football smarts to really help them bed into the new competition that they're facing. Which brings us to the 2024 draft crop, and using all of that data that I've collected to try to make an assumption on who is going to be the best performed draftee in 2025, I have a list here of 7 names, 7 non-key position players that I think are going to have the biggest impact, and then we'll do the key position players after that. Number 1, I have Finn O'Sullivan. He's heading to North Melbourne, who are a bottom 2 side, so there'll be plenty of opportunities for Foss to get embedded into that team quickly. He has a high level of positional flexibility. I think he's one of the rare midfielders that could play anywhere across the field. A lot of people are suggesting that he's going to slide in across half-back and fill that vacant Colby McKercher role, who pushes higher up the ground. But I actually think Finn O'Sullivan would be better coming in off a high half forward role. He can come in and receive the ball from those midfielders and use his real turn of pace, that explosive agility that he has to break the game open. I don't necessarily see Finn O'Sullivan getting huge numbers in his first season, but I think his impact per disposal will be exceptional. Number 2 on the list, I have Xavier Lindsay. Now, he's going to a little bit more of a successful team, at least in the last few years. I think one of the things that Xavier Lindsay really excels at is his running ability. He has a high level of footy IQ and he can play in multiple positions, which is really strong. He has that pedigree of playing across half-back and he knows where to go to find the footy. I think the vacant Trent Rivers role as he pushes higher up the ground and goes into that midfield role leaves a position there for Xavier Lindsay just to slot in across half-back, use the footy not dissimilar to how Harry Sheasel and Nick Dacos were used in the early parts of their career. Number 3, I have Toby Travalia. He is a bit of a running man, and I think that really lends itself to being successful in early parts of your career. Now, the team that he's going to in St Kilda definitely has opportunity for him to play. Whether he's going to go into a midfield role early or he's going to play across half-back, I think he's probably not someone that's going to get a huge amount of the footy in his first season, but if he can roll across half-back, play a little bit of almost a third tall sort of role. You've got that vacant battle position. I think if he can take some intercept marks and just, hurt the opposition on the transition, he's going to be down there with players like Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller, like Jack Sinclair. They're going to help him out a lot there and try to get the footy in his hands as much as they can. So I think he's another one with that athletic makeup that can have a real impact at AFL level in his first season. Number 4 is Joe Berry as that small forward. As I said earlier, with the statistics of the players that are going on to be successful in their first season, they often are a high forward type player. Berry's someone that has a big tank to be able to get up the ground and affect the contest at stoppages as well. So he's got pretty good stoppage craft and can come in and help. But the big thing here is Port Adelaide's forward line, which looked really slow and really dour in that final series. They didn't have enough players that were impacting. I think there's a perfect spot there for Joe Berry just to come in, be able to play as a high forward. He can attend some stoppages, get his hands on the ball, and either deliver it inside 50 or operate inside 50 as well. Number 5 is Sid Draper. I think Draper has the best combination of accumulation and damage in his game with that bit of pace that he has. And more importantly here is the Adelaide side that he's going into, which really has a vacant opportunity there for him to inject some pace. We know Saligo's gone through. They're trying to phase out guys like Rory Laird and Matt Crouch that don't have a lot of leg speed and don't progress the football up the field. So I think, if they're looking at players like Jordan Dawson and Dan Curtin, you've still got Saligo there, of course. I think Sid Draper's the perfect one. Has that little bit of, fleet of foot about him. He has that nice turn of pace as well. I think he can do really well from a midfield perspective and be a guy that, averages around the 20 disposal mark and, tries to push forward and hit the scoreboard a little bit as well. Number 6, I have Levi Ashcroft. He's one of the smartest footballers in this draft crop. One of the reasons I have him a little bit further down the list is just that he's going to such a good team. But I'm sure given the quality, Brisbane will be trying to get him into that team in some sort of a role. Now, I see him a little bit more as a genuine inside mid, so I don't think he really is suited to necessarily wing roles or half forward roles. I think that half forward role would be the one that best suits Ashcroft. He can use his sort of smart running patterns to get involved in the play. He does hit the scoreboard a lot at, Coates Talent League and junior level. Whether he can replicate that at the senior level will be another question, but we know that the physicality of bigger bodies is not a problem to Ashcroft. Earlier in the season, he had 35 touches and kicked the goal at VFL level. So a little bit further down the list, but someone that I have really high expectations of in their first season. Number 7 is Jagger Smith, and I think, again, he could be one of the most successful of these players if he's able to get himself into that team as a starting point. It's obviously a strong midfield. You've got Sam Walsh, you've got Patrick Cripps, you've got Adam Cherry, you've got George Hewitt, all of those sorts of players that he's going to have to try to get in front of. I don't see Jagger as a particularly versatile player, but he is a player that has big accumulation. He's able to get his hands on the football and he has a good endurance base to be able to cover the ground, get from contest to contest and affect the game. So a little bit down compared to some of those others, but I think if he plays and he gets a prominent role in that midfield, look out. I've got 3 Smokies just to add to that. I've got Jesse Detoli at the Swans, Cody Angove to GWS, and Christian Moraes to Port Adelaide. I think, most of that is based on a running ability, particularly of Cody Angove and Christian Moraes. They just get up and down the ground. I think both of the teams they're going to don't have those sort of genuine wingers, and I think that they could get themselves into the team from an early point of view, establish themselves and use their running. They don't have to use their physicality because of that outside aspect to their game. Jesse Detoli, more of a high forward, small forward type player. I just think Sydney is screaming out for that, and his high footy IQ really lends itself to having an impact from day dot. And the key position players, I've got a lot less on the list here. I just think it's unlikely for key position players to have a big impact in their first couple of seasons, even like, Logan Morris, Kao Shadir, those types of players. Morris is a little bit of an undersized player, so I think it lends itself to that. So for that reason, the first one I have on the list here is Luke Traynor. I just think he's almost not a key position player, so I'm almost cheating here. The fact that he has such good ball use coming out of defense, and I think he can slot into that Richmond back line and be a bit more of a user, kind of replace someone like a Dan Rioli more than actually a key position player. So I think given the quality that's already in Richmond's back line, I think that's one, he's going to have good leadership around him and someone that can do really well. I would have Alex Tyrou. I think he can use his raw athleticism to really affect the game as either a key position forward or a key position defender. The problem, he's got that back fracture, so I think he's going to take a little bit longer to get over that and then have an impact. The other one I've got here is Job Shanahan. He's a very athletic key position forward. At junior level, he's definitely played more as a deeper forward, but given the fact that West Coast, you'd expect them to improve a little bit more across this season. They've got the likes of Jake Waterman, Oscar Allen, so he gets to play a little bit of a third foil. That midfield group starts to improve a little bit, get some more inside 50s. You've still got Elliot Yeo, you've got Harley Reid pumping the ball down there. I think Job Shanahan can just get out, use his athleticism to get away from defenders, not rely on that physicality, and have a good opening season. And the last one is probably more of a circumstantial one, and that's Jack Whitlock to Port Adelaide. I just think there's vacant forward roles there. You've got players like Lukosius who are coming into the team that are going to go down there. We don't really know what's going on with someone like a Todd Marshall. Charlie Dixon's retired, so there's definitely vacant forward roles. Like I said with Joe Berry in the smaller players, Jack Whitlock, if he can come in and grab that opportunity and make the most of it, I think he can have a real impact from early on as well. But I'm less confident in any of my key position players. I think generally speaking, not many key position players have a huge impact in their first season. Okay, guys, that is a wrap. Let me know what you thought of my first year success story predictions. Once again, I'd like to thank Deakin University for powering this video. They've been the #1 sports science school in the world for 3 years running. Thanks for watching again, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.